Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hey, Skull King Nation. Welcome back to the Skull King Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood, and I am super excited for this episode today. We are continuing our series on the 2017 NFL Draft Class and the prospects coming in. And this time we wanted to cover the quarterbacks, except we wanted to cover a whole bunch at a time. And in order to do that, we wanted to bring in an expert analyst who could, who's seen all their footage, has actually seen some of them play live in person, and has a better grasp overall on how to compare each guy. And so today, as a University of Washington Husky fan, I am super excited to let you know that today on this podcast, I am interviewing Brock Huard of ESPN and co-host of the Brock and Salk Show on 710 ESPN Seattle. He does a great job of breaking down each of the quarterbacks, what he likes, what he doesn't like. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So let's go ahead and get it started. Okay, Skull King Nation, it's time for another interview, another episode. I am really excited about this one. As a Washington Husky fan, I actually got to was a big fan of this guy when he was playing quarterback for the Huskies in the 90s. So I'd like to welcome to the show NCAA analyst for ESPN and co-host of the Brock and Salk Show in Seattle, Mr. Brock Huard. Thanks for coming on the show with us, Brock.
Yeah, you got it, Ryan. I'm excited to do it, and love you guys that are out there and have such a passion and zeal for the draft and fantasy football and all the new talent and assets coming into the league. So excited to do it.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and just hop into this? Let's start with Mitch Trubisky. He's a lot of people are touting him as possibly the number one quarterback in this draft. Just kind of what can you kind of tell us about what you have seen from some of the tape that you've maybe watched on Mitch, or I guess Mitchell, as he wants to go.
Yeah, that's right. You got to get that name right, man. That's most important to him and his and his representation going forward. So yeah, I do have a little background with Trubisky. I'd called a few Carolina games over the years while he was a backup. And it wasn't just a story out of thin air that you heard the coaches loving him and talking about him. They really did. It was a tough decision of whether or not he was going to win the job 2 years ago. He ultimately did not, and he had to sit and watch. And what I love the most then, Ryan, is instead of quitting, like a lot of college quarterbacks do, and looking for their next destination and where am I going to land, he stuck through it. When Marquise Williams was named the starter, he didn't just look for his next home. He was biding his time. He knew there would be an opportunity. He loved his teammates. So as far as some of those intangibles, that absolutely stands out to me in a day and age and culture of college football where if it doesn't go my way, I try to find a new place. I try to find a new home and somewhere more comfortable and somebody that will tell me what I want to hear. So from a character standpoint, I really like that. Now, from a playing standpoint, we called his Georgia game last year, the home opener, the Chick-fil-A Classic down there to kick off the season. And right away, you see his arm talent. He's physically put together. He can make every throw on the field. He's gifted, I think, with pretty clean fundamentals. And there's a lot of things to like in that regard. What I did not love in that game, and what I did not love in the 2016 season, is when the moments got real big, I don't think he always capitalized on him and on them. And that would be my concern. I think of the name Ryan Tannehill is probably the closest comp, though I don't think Trubisky has quite the size or quite the ceiling that Tannehill does. But to me, that would be the guy that I would compare coming out of college.
Okay, I think that gives some of our listeners a good basis for Trubisky. Do you think that the fact that he's only had the 1 year as a starter may play a little bit into the big game mentality of him maybe, not necessarily capitalizing on those events just because he hasn't necessarily been in them as many times?
I think it does. I think it's also a program in North Carolina that's not traditionally been in a lot of those big moments.
True.
They had success, even more success the year before, but you're not coming from a Florida State. You're not coming from an Alabama. You're not coming from a Michigan or Ohio State. You're not coming from one of those programs. And he was an Ohio kid with some choices coming out. And he's got some of that Ohio blood, which I know those scouts love. I know the coaches in North Carolina really loved it. And that played a role, they felt, in why he stuck it out and why he didn't quit. He wasn't a California 7-on-7 kid or a state of Texas, I'm bigger than life in high school and I get what I want kind of kid. He was coach's son, coached hard in Ohio, in the state of Ohio, had some of that backbone to him. And again, the evaluators do like that, but you would have sure loved to see him be bigger in the biggest moments on some of the biggest stages last year.
All right. Do you think so? From what I'm getting from just kind of your analysis, you don't necessarily think that he'd, if he were to say go to Cleveland, which I don't think they'd take him with the number 1, but if they were to maybe grab him with the number 12 pick, if they don't manage to trade for Garoppolo, do you think that he would be better served as maybe playing, sitting a year behind, say, a Cody Kessler, and learning, or do you think that he would benefit at all from being thrown in the fire?
The only time to me that you benefit sitting and watching is when you have someone great doing it. When there's someone that you can really learn from. When Aaron Rodgers can really learn from Brett Favre. When Matt Hasselbeck can really learn from Brett Favre. When guys can sit behind and watch someone who's actually really skilled and really adept, Jimmy Garoppolo, watching Tom Brady. If you're going to go and get drafted to Cleveland and you can't beat out Cody Kessler, then you've got a problem, and that shouldn't be the guy that you draft. If they draft him to Cleveland, unfortunately, he comes into a dysfunctional organization and not the ideal timing with nobody there to sit and learn from. And frankly, who's more gifted and talented than he is. I think he would come in and play and come in and struggle in that environment.
All righty. Let's go ahead and move on to the national champion, Deshaun Watson. I think for me, the thing that really bursts off his game tape is his athleticism. And having been able to talk to Don Munson earlier in the week, just kind of his thoughts on his leadership capabilities. What are some of your thoughts on Deshaun Watson coming out of Clemson?
He's my favorite kid in this draft, and it's not even close. He'd be the only one I would consider with a top of the first round or anywhere in that area at all to say, yeah, this is the guy that I believe in, that I want to lead my program next year. He's the only one in this class, and the only one that's second is probably Mahomes, which we'll get to, I know, in a little bit. Watson is a total winner. I was at ESPN last year, Ryan. We were doing a college football live studio show, and it just so happened perfectly, coincidentally for me, to have Deshaun Watson there that day on what they call the ESPN car wash, where he went to a radio show and he went to another studio show and then he came to our studio show. And to watch the people he was a magnet, and to watch the people around him want to be close to him and his charisma and his personality. And I've seen the other way. I've seen, guys that get in that environment and they don't want to be around anybody, and they're a loner. And then the people that are in charge of them that day tire of them. And the people from the school don't want to be there with that player either. It could not have been the more inverse for Deshaun Watson. Everybody wanted to be around him. Everybody cared about him. He was charismatic. He was energetic. He was the life of the party. And I think that's a big reason why he's been such a big winner throughout his entire football career.
Yeah, what was it? Don was saying that his record as a starter at Clemson was like 31-3 or something like that.
Yeah, 33-2, I believe.
Yeah,
33-2, and obviously could not have finished any better and nearly beat Alabama the year before. I mean, those aren't just, and that's Florida State, and that's playing some upper-level competition with enormous expectation. Unlike Mitch Trubisky in North Carolina, the Dabo has built that program into a 10-11 win team every year. And when are you ever going to take the step? And when are you going to get over the hump? Well, they did, and they did for one reason, and his name is Deshaun Watson. And when you elevate a program, to me, like Dak Prescott did at Mississippi State, when you took Mississippi State to number 1 in the rankings, the places their program had never even sniffed before, that kid was special. And Deshaun Watson is equally special in my mind.
All right. So you think that, again, we're using, the Browns as our barometer, as we know that they're one of the teams most desperate for a quarterback. Do you see Deshaun Watson having success? Again, you've mentioned the dysfunctionality in Cleveland, but do you think that he could possibly have some success to help rebuild the Cleveland Browns?
He could do better than Trubisky would, because I think of his ability to run, some of the duality in his game. You will have a couple pieces on your offensive line, open support. He just doesn't have a run game. He's got very, very average wide receivers to throw to. I mean, that whole situation is in the rebuild mode. You would have more productive numbers, I think, than anybody in this draft, in my opinion. He would also struggle against the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals in that division. Because of just the level of competition, those teams being, frankly, a whole lot better than what Cleveland's roster is still going to be this year, as they continue to be in rebuild mode. For Deshaun Watson in his career, I hope he lands in San Francisco. I hope that I hope that their decision makers are like, you know what, this kid is too special. He's got too many talents. He was too productive. While the arm strength is by no means, sometimes his quality of NFL coverages is still to be determined, and frankly a bit questionable at times. To me, there's just too much play there to hold, and I would think San Francisco would be a home run fit. If I'm just with that head coach, with that GM, with that rebuild, instead of, unfortunately, Cleveland very much on the radar.
All right. It sounds like you may be going through a spot with a little bit shaky receptions. We're losing you just a little bit.
Sorry, Ryan. Whereabouts did you lose me there? I'll pull over and see if I can find a better spot. Did you hear me mention San Francisco?
Yeah, we got through that. It cut out for just a second or two in a couple spots. But I think we got the basic gist. Again, so you think San Francisco is the best spot for Watson? I think with Kyle Shanahan being his head coach, I think that would really be a good spot for him as well.
Well, yeah, I think if San Francisco would trade down, unfortunately, where they find themselves in the top 5, there's going to be too many other talented and much better players. But if they could find a partner, like a Cleveland, or find somebody in the top 15 picks that has a once-in-a-generation safety that they want, or a corner that they want, or the one wide receiver that they want and want to make sure they get, or tackle or pass rusher, or any of those guys where San Francisco is going to be sitting in the top 5, and they can find a way to trade down in the top half of the first round, to me, that would be a home run for the 49ers.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Let's get to DeShone Kizer, coming out of Notre Dame. Honestly, for me, he's the one that I've actually seen the least hype about. Kind of give us some of your thoughts on DeShone Kizer coming into the draft.
Yeah, I think he's a third-round pick. I think that would be, if I look at all the talent in this draft, at corner, at safety, at linebacker, at D lineman, at running back, at tight end, I think DeShone Kizer is very much a work in progress. I think his fundamentals with his feet are very poor. I know he's got a nice live arm, but we have seen plenty of live arms get to the NFL, and that's not the end-all, be-all. You've got to have the feet, the fundamentals. Now, he does have some size. He's got more traditional size than Deshaun Watson has, and even Trubisky and some of the others, as far as what the NFL looks for. And it's why he will go much higher than the third round. But to me, he should have come back to school. There's no reason as a redshirt sophomore, where he was in his career, and with the incredible inconsistency in his career, that he didn't stick around South Bend and out. So to me, he's very much a work in progress.
All right. Yeah. From what I've seen, yeah. Again, you talked about his natural arm ability, being able to sling the ball. I've seen some of the analysis I've seen on him is that he tends to hold the ball too long. He has okay pocket awareness and being able to shift, but again, like you said, his footwork isn't the best. And so, the main thing I've seen is he needs time to develop. he would have been better. A lot of people agree that he would have been better off staying for at least another year at Notre Dame.
Yeah, and I saw a Syracuse game, and he threw for 400 and something yards. Syracuse couldn't cover anybody. I mean, there were games this year that he feasted on bad opponents. But once again, you go and you look against the elite competition, and what did it look like? You know, when the game was on the line, what did it look like when it really mattered? You know, against the most quality opponents. And this year was a tremendous, tremendous struggle, and a lot of it was interceptions, inaccuracy, decision making. Things that should be very concerning to anybody that's making that decision. I mean, if we're talking franchise quarterbacks or first-round quarterbacks, and somebody goes down that road in April, to me that feels like E.J. Manuel. That feels like an unbelievable reach that you're just looking at upside and you're just not watching the tape in the big moment and knowing what you're getting to work with right out the gate.
Or even, I know that you were really disappointed in the Jets last year when they took Hackenberg in the second round as well. Just kind of the same thing.
Close. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You're not close. And to be honest, if I'm an NFL evaluator and I'm a GM and it's my desk that's on the line, what I'm doing is I'm cutting out a lot of tape. I'm not going to waste my time watching the Syracuse game. I'm not going to waste my time watching the Army game. I'm going to watch 3 or 4 games, 5 games against the highest level of competition. And when the game really mattered and those decisions were so critical, because that's what you get every week in the NFL. You don't get a breather. You don't get any time off. What do you do in those 4 or 5 possessions? What do you do in those 4 or 5 plays where you have got to be a difference maker? And if I see miss, minus, interception, minus, miss, as I did with Hackenberg, as I certainly have with Kizer this year, I get a real red flag, and I look at a guy that's much more of a developmental project than anything I can build around and put my livelihood on the line for.
All right, let's go ahead and move to our fourth guy, Patrick Mahomes. Again, with him, kind of a spread passing system, but has an absolute cannon for an arm. I know you say, again, arm strength isn't the end-all be-all, but it's the one of the things that really jumps off the page with Patrick Mahomes.
He's the most intriguing of these 4 guys, and I would rank Deshaun Watson as my guy, as my only kind of first-rounder, and then Mahomes would be number 2 on my list of this group of just, man, this guy is real intriguing. I look at Trubisky, and he feels a little bit like Andy Dalton. If somebody could get him in the top of the second round, I think that would be a pretty good value for me. And he's going to go way higher than that, as all these quarterbacks do, because everybody reaches, because they have to have them, because it's what their job depends upon and what is the lifeblood. But to me, in this draft, it's Deshaun Watson, and then the most intriguing, and maybe even more intriguing than Deshaun in some ways, is Mahomes, because he came out of no structure. He played on a team with horrific defense, and getting no help in that in any way whatsoever, and having to carry the load and make every play in every game and every moment for them to have any chance to win. And the fact that they did win, and they won more than they lost, or they fought tooth and nail. And I called this game when they went on the road to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And if he's not playing, they lose by 4 touchdowns. I called the bowl game against LSU with him. And if he's not playing, they lose by 5 touchdowns. And the fact that they were even in that game against LSU, the fact they beat Arkansas, was solely because of one guy, and that's Patrick Mahomes, who, as you said, has the most uniquely gifted arm in this draft.
I actually watched I think it was a YouTube video of him throwing the ball, was it 75 yards from his knees?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I was chatting with some of the folks from the John Gruden camp, and I don't know about you, but I sure look forward to watching those half-hour shows. And I've got some friends that work around those and tell me kind of the behind the scenes, because it's not a half hour that they spend with John. It's an entire day. I mean, you get 30 minutes of a TV program, but they spend sometimes 8-9 hours together down there in this office, out on the field. And I was telling one of the producers, I said, man, you got to get a radar gun. If I was out there, I want to see a radar gun, and I want to see if this guy can hit 60 miles an hour with a football, because I think he can. And in fact, I think at the combine, his average velocity was about 59 miles an hour, which was tops of any of these prospects. Deshaun was one of the lower guys. Watson, we talked about him earlier, about 55. That gives you a little gauge of just how much gas this guy has in the tank. And he's got a special arm.
Yeah, ended up throwing for over 5,000 yards, 41 TDs, only, and with how you said that how he was basically dependent on to win games, only throwing 10 interceptions with how much he had to throw the ball, I think is a plus as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of toothpaste out of that tube, right? And can you put some of that toothpaste back in? And that will be the challenge for him. A guy that, since he's played, and in high school is the same deal, right? It was the Johnny Manziel phenomenon down there, and all those high schools running the spread system, and it was the same kind of deal that he had to be the star on every play of every possession of every game. And he's going to have to understand, and this will be the question, and I think an NFL team may take him at the end of the first round, or draft back into the end of the first round to take him because of the level of intrigue. And can he manage? And can you throttle it back? And can you take a thoroughbred of a racehorse that's been allowed to just run free and wild, and can you put him in the lane and ask him to manage an NFL game and manage the NFL decisions? To me, that'll be the biggest and the most intriguing challenge for Mahomes.
Yeah, the one team that I've seen most attached to him is the New Orleans Saints, for him to learn behind Drew Brees. Yes, and what a home run that would be. I mean, an absolute kind of home run for them to unlike that situation we talked about earlier where, well, maybe Trubisky can sit and maybe there's Cody Kessler in Cleveland. No, you don't learn anything in that regard. But if you get around Drew Brees, who's a tactician, who values the ball, who's so fundamentally sound, who, in a throwing competition, won't want to get next to Patrick Mahomes in any way and try to throw the ball like Patrick can, but knows how to be so crafty and play the game. That would be a home run for Mahomes, no doubt about it. All right. Well, we covered those four. I wanted to ask one more question. A lot of people always wonder, who's going to be the next, for lack of a better comparison, Tom Brady, that guy that was picked, 199th overall, who was late in the draft, who could end up being a star. Do you think that there's a quarterback in this draft, other than these four, who could go later that you think possibly maybe has, the mentality and the grit to work himself into being, not necessarily an all-pro, but at least an NFL starter?
Yeah, one guy to just keep an eye on that I think is going to make an NFL team, and that's Peterman out of Pitt. And if he had any help defensively this year, and Pat Narduzzi went to Pitt, and he was supposed to be the defensive guru, and they were supposed to just knock people out and do just enough on offense and play great defense and win games. Well, they won because of their run game and their quarterback. And Peterman was real efficient this year, and I saw him a couple different times. And just from a structure standpoint and a fundamental standpoint, and I don't know, it's a reach to say Tom Brady in any regard whatsoever. But a guy that had to start his career over, that had to transfer out to Tennessee, that had to go up to Pitt and earn it. He played at a real high level. And if you ask Matt Canada, the new coordinator at LSU, what Peterman meant, it meant a couple $1 million salary or darn close to it for Canada. He found a lot of success and a huge success on offense, and he credited his quarterback for that. I would too. I thought Peterman was a lot better and under the radar with some of these top guys, and got a little game to him. And I'll be curious to see where he lands and where he survives in the NFL. I'm going to keep an eye on him throughout his career.
All right. Again, Brock, thank you so much. This has been our conversation with ESPN analyst Brock Huard. Again, Brock, thank you so much for giving up some of your time to be able to talk with us about the quarterbacks in the draft. We really enjoyed it, and I hope that maybe down the road you'd be willing to maybe come on our show again for a few minutes.
Sure, maybe we check in and see that Deshaun Watson's a total bust, that Trubisky's a star, and that DeShone Kizer leading someone to the Super Bowl, right? Because that's how it goes with these quarterbacks. When you think you know everything about them, you sure learn that environment, maturity, and that team they go to at the next level can be as big a deal as anything in the process. But we'll definitely do it, Ryan, and appreciate it, and thanks for the time.
All right. Thank you so much, Brock. We'll talk to you later.
You got it, bud.
All
you
right.
bet, man. Have a great day.
You too. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.